Generally, that's something that would record itself onto itself, but if you're worried about a recording, we certainly have the audio and video available for you.
Okay.
At any time.
They're asking us to do that.
I'm sorry?
They're asking us to record on this, you know.
You should be able to just press record, and it's now recording.
Okay.
You can see the lines right there, so
Yeah.
it should be all set.
Okay.
It's not mine, so I don't know anything about it, but just guessing.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
I guess so. We have a quorum. 7:32.
You're keeping,
I'll keep them in, yeah.
7:32, we have a quorum. The Architectural Preservation District Commission call to order.
Thank you.
We're opening the public hearing.
What are you looking for?
I have to read the notice.
Okay.
Town of Lunenburg Architectural Preservation District Commission. Town of Lunenburg public hearing. Lunenburg Architectural Preservation District Commission will hold a public hearing on March 10th, 2022, 7:30 p.m. Ritter Memorial Building, 960 Mass Ave, Lunenburg, Mass. To hear and review an application for certificate to alter to demolish under code of the Town of Lunenburg, Chapter 113, Architectural Preservation District, the building located at 30 School Street, map 71, parcel 76, Lunenburg, Mass. Owner applicant is the Town of Lunenburg, P.O. Box 135, Lunenburg, Mass. Materials are available for viewing at Planning Office, 960 Mass Ave, Lunenburg. Is the applicant present to make the presentation for their application?
I can certainly read.
You have a copy of that?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I can read into the record, Mr. Chair, the description or the reasoning we gave in the application. Now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the overall condition of the building has significantly deteriorated after 15+ years of vacancy. Many years of attempting to have the building repurposed for senior housing failed. Multiple town meeting warrant articles seek to authorize the select board to sell or lease the building, which might have attracted outside developers to propose a renovation project, have also failed. The town also advertised a request for proposals for the sale of 30 School Street in March 2017, which had no responses. It should have said no responses in the application. The select board asserts that the town meeting voters of Lunenburg will not approve a renovation project for the building that it has to pay for on its own. That would likely cost in the millions. And neither do they want to sell the property. That stalemate has only caused the building's fate and condition to worsen. With that as a backdrop, the current building has been very problematic as it attracts vandalism and trespassing, which are high liabilities for the town. It is not feasible to provide 24-hour security for the building, and without it, we risk a real possibility of injury or possibly worse. Lastly, as we continue down the path of repurposing that property, the projects that have emerged as having broad town support indicate that the building will need to be removed in its entirety or at least in part. We seek this demolition to allay these present liabilities and to prepare for a future project whose design is underway.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the applicant? Questions or comments from members of the commission?
No questions, Chairman.
Mr. Dwyer?
I don't think so.
All right. Any questions or comments from members of the public?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Dave Rogers, 82 Highland Street. Select person, Michael Ray Jeffries and Tom Alonso have done a fine job recapping the chronological timeframe of the APDC's handling of the application for certificate to demolish the building located at 30 School Street. Clearly, the APDC did not comply with the...
Excuse me, Mr. Rogers?
Yes, sir.
We're focusing this hearing on the CTA application. If you have any comments or wish to speak on any APDC process, you can attend our regular meeting, which is monthly, for public comment, or if you wish to be on the agenda, you can call me and we'll put you on the agenda for the meeting. But
So-
this meeting is a public hearing for
That's right.
CTA only.
And so do I understand correctly, Mr. Chairman, that you're precluding my ability to do a capsulated kind of situation relative to how I feel about the APDC and specifically this issue that's in front of us?
Tonight we're speaking about the matter at hand for the acceptance or the denial of the CTA, not about previous processes in the APDC's actions.
I contend, Mr. Chairman, that is all part and parcel of what I'd like to discuss.
I disagree. We're focusing on the CTA only.
So accordingly, Mr. Chairman, are you ruling me out of order and precluding me the opportunity to let you know at this public hearing how I feel about this whole process?
I'm allowing you to speak on the CTA, whether it's going to be approved or not.
I would hope that I would be afforded the opportunity to continue my notes, and I think you will get the approach that I'm trying to discuss, and I think there won't be any question in anybody's mind about what my thoughts are.
No, I won't allow that. Only
And under what grounds, Mr.
things
Chairman?
on the grounds that the public hearing is on the CTA, not on the APD
And the
process.
CTA is what, Mr. Chairman?
Certificate to alter whether to demolish the school building or to accept it or to deny it.
Okay. So you've not heard the rest of my presentation, however articulate it might be. And you are not allowing me to talk about the historic perspective of this and my feelings thereon.
I wish you to speak to the CTA only.
Well, let me rephrase some things then. I hope that the approval will be given to tear down this building. I think that the historical perspective that has been discussed, the people have spoken, and clearly there have been some miscues, as it were, for the APDC in terms of following the rules and
Mr.
regulations.
Rogers, we're
Yes.
talking about the CTA only, not about the APD process.
The APDC process is part of the
I disagree. We're speaking about the CTA only. If you're not going to speak on the CTA, whether your case for the CTA to be approved or disapproved on the merits of the building, I'm not allowing any other comment on that. This is a specific hearing on the CTA, not on judging the APD. See,
Okay, once again, my own personal thought is that you've demonstrated your unwillingness to listen to the people, the voters, and I am very concerned about the way you conduct your meetings and the way you allow the voters of this town.
do you have any further comments on the building and the CTA itself?
I would hope that the permit to demolish this building would be approved as expeditiously as possible. And it should have been done long ago, in my mind. But for the fact of the ineptness of individuals that have...
We're not talking about...
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about. I've got a reasonable command of the English language.
And thank you for your comment. Any other public comment? Yes,
Yeah, hi, I'm Dave Taki, I live at 72 Lemonster Road, the property adjacent to the schoolhouse. I share about 130 feet of property line with the schoolhouse, and I'm here just to express my support for the approval of the removal of the schoolhouse on that property. It's been a concern of mine since I moved here 5.5 years ago, both as a safety and as, frankly, a property value issue as well.
thank you for your valid comment.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
I would ask
Yes,
that public comment that was read the other night at the select boards be entered into the record as well.
Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
How is it that you will allow that which was presented at the select board meeting on Tuesday to be entered into the record, and you won't let a citizen just come in here and essentially let his views be known?
The town manager's asked me to put that in there, the applicant for the CTA. I'm not aware of what's in that. The town is the applicant, they're giving me
Who is the town, Mr. Chairman?
the town manager represents the town of Lunenburg. The applicants are the select board.
Does speak to the process, that public comment that was read the other night, but
Pardon?
it does speak to the process followed, one of the selectmen's comments from the other night.
So what I've said previously, that we're focusing on the CTA tonight, should that be allowed into the record?
I don't really know the process on this. I think probably the portions of it that relate to the application should be included.
Surely there's sections in there that relate to the application.
Timeliness of and completeness of the application.
I don't know.
I think you're the chairman. I think, yeah. You can decide.
I think we're focusing on the CTA.
Yeah.
The hearing is for the CTA, not for the process of the APD.
Yeah.
If you wish that to be in the record, I would, yes, sir.
For what it's worth,
Yeah.
I would counsel the commission to give a lot of latitude. People have given up their evening to speak on this, and, you know, whatever their subject and how they're getting to it might be, I would ask that you hear from them. Again, it's your meeting, you can make those decisions, but I think it would
Okay.
be beneficial to give a lot of latitude to people to speak what they want to say.
Thank you. We'll enter that into the record, Mr. Rogers, you may speak. Please limit your talk to a reasonable amount of time.
As I said, select person Michael Ray Jeffries and Tom Alonso did a fine job recapping the chronology of the APDC's handling of the application for certificate to demolish the building located at 30 School Street. During the 50 years that I have lived in Lunenburg, I have never witnessed the lack of respect, compliance, professional conduct, uncooperativeness, interaction with the select board, and general vitriolic attitude as has been displayed by the APDC. The voters of our town, us, have clearly indicated that they support the demolishing of the former school at 30 School Street. The voters have spoken, yet the APDC continues to resist the will of the people and make up their own rules, timelines, and direction, not to mention the ability, without the intervention of a very esteemed member of this community, of the rights that we all have as Americans and as voters, and your opportunity to quiet us has not gone unnoticed. I don't think that the issues surrounding the building at 30 School Street need to be discussed in any great detail, because it's been at the town meetings, and it certainly has had its proper newspaper reporting. This hearing is a compilation of that, so that people who, for whatever reason, want to come in and let you know how they feel about this should and could be heard. And I thank Mr. Alonso publicly for his intervention and common sense approach to democracy as I know it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment? Any additional, any comments or questions from the board?
I guess just to move the process forward, I'm sorry, and Richard, what step of the hearing process are you thinking that we're on now?
We are on 9.
Oh, okay. Any additional information needed? Yeah, okay. I mean, because I think really I want to bring the discussion around to, you know, back to the APDC bylaw and our guidelines. And on page 23, we have the approval process. And these are the criteria that we're supposed to be making our decision on, so I just want to make sure everybody's aware of those and make sure that we can answer to these criteria. So In fact, if people don't mind, I'll go ahead and read these and see if
Yes, go ahead.
if anybody has any comments to make regarding these. So, when we received an application, there is a decision process to approve or deny the CTA. And it goes, 1, proposed alterations that maintain or enhance the historic value of the structure shall be granted a certificate to alter. If a proposed alteration degrades the historical value of the structure, the APDC shall first determine if the alteration is necessary. Necessary alterations would include those needed to preserve the structure or parts thereof. Improved energy efficiency would also be considered necessary, as would renovation of dilapidated structures or parts thereof. Legally mandated alterations are also necessary, including those as a result of code requirements and operational requirements surrounding the change in use. In an alteration, if an alteration is not necessary and would degrade the historical value of the structure, a CTA will not be allowed. 3, if an alteration is necessary, the APDC must evaluate if the degradation of the historic value is avoidable. Is there another way that the alteration could be done that would still achieve the necessary purpose and maintain or enhance the historical value? If so, the APDC may attach stipulations to the CTA or recommend a revised proposal for review and approval. I'll just continue. I'll read the other three criteria. If the alteration is necessary and the degradation of historic value is unavoidable, the APDC will assess the degree or extent to which the degradation might be minimized. The APDC will consider the cost of avoidance or minimization above the estimated cost of the proposed alteration. And 5, the APDC will use the design standards documented by the bylaw, section 113-9, in considering any proposed changes. And finally, when considering a proposal to demolish a historical structure, the APDC must consider alternatives to demolition. If none of the alternatives seem to justify the ultimate historic value of the resulting structure, the APDC shall issue a CTA for demolition. In such cases, the APDC shall solicit public input and act in keeping with its own mission and purpose. And I think at our last meeting, we read over this and we read it 4 or 5 times trying to figure out exactly what this sentence means. If none of the alternatives seem to justify the ultimate historic value of the resulting structure, the APDC shall issue a CTA for demolition. And I think what this really, what we felt it boiled down to was if there's alternatives to demolishing the building, what are those and are they worth it? Like for what you'd have to put into saving the building, would it be worth the historic value that would be preserved or that you'd get out of the building? And the last sentence is, we'll ask for public input because it's very hard to put a dollar on historic value. And I think the application that Mr. Alonso read didn't speak directly to this, but it certainly spoke to the problem that we've been having with the stalemate, that we haven't been able to do anything with this building. And that's a big part of why it's fallen into disrepair, is that we haven't been able to, that the town doesn't want to sell it. The town meeting, they've forbidden, forbidden the select board from selling the property. So it makes it very hard to dispose of it or renovate it or really do anything with it. I would ask just once more if anybody here has anything that would speak directly to our decision criteria, because all these criteria regard how can we preserve the historic value of this building? How can we not degrade it? Because that is our purpose and mission, is to protect these buildings and make sure that their historic value is not degraded or eliminated altogether.
as a member of the public at this point, since it's public comment. I personally have a long-established interest in historical preservation. That's where, oh, I'm sorry, Lou Franco, Harbor Street, 250. I have been interested in historical preservation all of my life, and if there was any way I believe this building could be saved, I would advocate for that. But I believe that, having examined it, all of the degradation that could occur practically has occurred, and that there is no practical alternative to demolition. And, you know, that's not something I take lightly. I just wanted to let you know that I do care about historical preservation, and I think this building is basically shot, and we can do better things with that space over there.
I do want to comment, first of all, thank you for reading into the record the bylaw, because I think that's obviously always a good place to start. I think that two things are true. I think when it was put together, as any bylaw, when it's new, you can't possibly think of every single accommodation or every single set of situations. And certainly, the bylaw is assuming in most part that there'll be a single entity that has full control over the property, a person, a family. Certainly did not envision this situation where you have a town who the select board, without the approval of town meeting, can't authorize funds or sell the building or do anything without the town's approval. And we've asked for that approval. We've asked for it several times in different manners and different forms. So I think the bylaw is kind of incomplete in that because it doesn't foresee this. The second part is I think that the last part, most of those parts have to do with a certificate to alter that does not require demolition. And only one part that you read actually does, and that's the last part, where you talked about the awkward phrasing of that statement. It's like, okay, well, how do you value the historical value of the building versus what it would cost to, maintain it or rehabilitate it? And that's a tough decision to begin with. I think in places where there's that kind of ambiguity or that kind of gray area, at least as one member, I'm looking for it to acknowledge, and that's why in our plans, when we met with the landscape architect, we asked the public, and we asked your commission too, to give input about how we could commemorate the building, to do at least that much, to commemorate that the building was there and make sure that it has a recognition without the complete rehabilitation of the building that I think would continue to stalemate. And that is what prompted our two things. It's what prompted the application. It also is what prompted us to fund and ask for the landscape designer, and that design has gotten very good feedback and support from the public, and in it, it recognizes the outside of the building, and to have commemorative parts that at least don't obliterate from history the fact that the building was there. But it falls far short of obviously rebuilding the building or maintaining its current structural value. So I would ask that common sense kind of approach be applied by the commission in coming to the determination, and especially in terms of reconciling that last sentence about that you said you guys struggled with at your last meeting. That's the way I would approach it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, Mr. Dwyer? Mr. Nicastro?
No comment, Mr. Chair.
I think the key word here is architectural preservation. That 30 School Street is in the architectural preservation district. The proposed demolition of 30 School Street, a contributing property to the architectural preservation district, as well as being in the National Historic District, does not meet the standards set forth in the APD bylaw and the APDC regulations. And specifically 113.1. Under the purpose, the bylaw is enacted under the Home Rule Amendment of the Mass Constitution for the purpose of limiting the detrimental effect of operations, substantial or minor additions, and demolitions on the character of such contributing properties in the neighborhood settings. The proposed demolition is also contrary to the APDC's mission as stated on page 4 of the APDC guidelines regulations, which states, the APDC shall ensure that whenever possible, the historic value of contributing properties is preserved or increased but never diminished. The demolition of this property would wipe out the historic value of the building. Demolition by neglect. Demolition by neglect is defined in 113-2 of the bylaw. It describes situations in which the neglect of one aspect of maintenance could cause a snowball effect leading to the degradation of other aspects of the structure and thus endanger the property as a whole. Demolition by neglect is not just the end state of total destruction, but also the stages of neglect that mark the process leading to total destruction. The owner of a contributing property is in violation of the APD bylaw should said structure be in any stage of demolition by neglect. The building has been in a stage of demolition by neglect since it was received from the school department, and the town has been unable to rectify this situation. Any sort of on APDC guidelines, page 18, demolition by neglect, any sort of demolition of a contributing property in the APD requires the APDC to issue a CTA. The design guidelines in this document are mostly concerned with how the property owner would go about obtaining such a permit. The APDC will not issue a CTA permitting demolition by neglect. Demolition by neglect is, by its very nature, a situation that violates normal procedure. The APDC requires that property owners take due measure to preserve not only the structure as a whole, but also to preserve original features and historic elements of the structure that would be difficult or impossible to replace or restore. The commission is in kind of a bind with the town because of these rules that I would feel that we would be going against if we allowed the CTA to demolish that building. It's contrary to the mission of the APDC, which states that the mission of the APDC is to preserve and enhance the historic character of the APD and of the town in general. The APDC shall ensure that whenever possible, the historic value of contributing properties is preserved or increased, but never diminished. To my mind, we would be going against and not representing the bylaw and the rules and regulations if we allowed the CTA.
Mr. Chairman, do you feel it is appropriate for us to deliberate on the matter at the hearing, or should we close the hearing? Do you feel like there's anything else that needs to be said?
I don't. We could close the hearing and call a special meeting next week to vote on it after we deliberate. Yes, Mr. Franco.
Yes, Lou Franco, 250 Orange Street. Again, speaking as a member of the public, clearly the rules envision circumstances under which they allow demolition under certain circumstances. And those circumstances appear to be when there is no practical alternative. And we seem to be at that point, that there is no practical alternative at this juncture. Maybe this would have been a different conversation 10 years ago. We can't get those 10 years back or 15 years back. We are where we are. And the rules would not have provisions for demolition unless it were envisioned under certain circumstances. I think these are those circumstances.
Thank you, Mr. Alonso.
I would concur with Mr. Franco, and I would add two things. First of all, to the point of demolition by neglect, I would point out that the APDC didn't even exist until, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, somewhere in there. And this building has been vacant for 15 years. So certainly, the bylaws do not look back and retroactively say you had to correct things from 10 years ago. So the building is from the starting point where it was. That's number one. Even so, there were some provisions or some requests that the APDC did ask the town to perform on the building that we did do. We didn't do everything on the list, but we did many of the things. So we have spent some money to address the concerns while the town had a chance to look at options and decide what to do with it. And lastly, one of the provisions you read about what the mission was is it said to preserve the character, not diminish or degrade whenever possible. Well, obviously that phrase is important, whenever possible. I think we're at a point where it is not possible to do that because we are not going to get the town to agree to the money and we're not going to get the town to agree to sell it. So again, I don't see any resolution to the logjam. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Dave Taki again. I would argue that the term of demolition by neglect really doesn't apply. I've only been here 5.5 years myself, but I have been at more meetings about this building than I care to count. I think the town, the selectmen, the community has done a lot of effort and outreach to try and do something with the property as it currently stands. There's been, they've reached out to try to sell it. They've tried to raise money to renovate it. They've reached out, I can't even tell you how many things that I've seen and read regarding the building. So I think there's been an honest effort by the town to do something with it. And when I talk to town, I'm talking about the legislative group that is tasked with managing those assets on behalf of the town. So I would argue that I don't think that would particularly apply to this specific property.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Rodman.
Mr. Chairman, my position on this is very, very simple. When all else fails, let common sense prevail. It's as simple as that.
Okay.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. The letter that was given to you by the town manager, have you agreed to put that into the record?
Yes, we have.
You have, okay. Because you have, would it be possible for you or someone on your board to read that letter so that we could understand the contents?
Just a minute. Yes. Ms. McGrath.
Laura McGrath, 22 Cushing Lane. And I guess that I am probably gonna shed a different light here, but I teach in the community of Leominster. And there was Carter Junior High in Leominster that had been vacant for, I don't know, a lot longer than 15, 20 years. And it was neglected for many, many of those years. And recently has been renovated into, I believe, apartment buildings. And I teach social studies. I'm a lover of history. And I just think that once you demolish a building, the building is gone forever. I mean, it's gone. You can't rebuild a building that was built in 1928. And I just, I don't know that everything was done in Lunenburg to try to find a way to reuse that building. And like I said, I'm the minority here. You know, I didn't grow up in this community. I don't have an emotional attachment to the building. I didn't attend that building. But I hate to see something demolished that you're gonna lose forever. I mean, it's gonna be gone forever. And there is history in that building. There are people who did go to that school. There are 6 young men who went off to fight in war and who died, who graduated from that high school. And I don't know. It's just my view. I just hate to see something totally demolished and gone forever that, the young kids today are never gonna be able to see it, and they're not gonna know the history. And I don't think that, the building can't be saved. I think the building can be saved. It's a structurally sound building. It needs a lot of renovation, but it's a structurally sound building.
Thank you.
Like I said, I'm the minority, but.
Did you want to read that?
If you would like me to, I will.
If it's not going to lead to further debate about the APDC process and relates to the CTA.
I can't promise you that.
Uh,
States more about our process, so
Okay.
if you're gonna read from it, I'd strike those comments.
I think as long as everybody's here, I'd
I'll
rather,
read the whole thing.
so you wanna, if you would like me to, I'd be happy to read the whole thing.
Before it's read, this is our first hearing, and we're volunteers. We haven't a lot of experience at this. We're appointed board, and if mistakes have been made, they've been honest mistakes. There's been insinuations, and there's been accusations that we have been purposely obstructing the CTA, and there's no such thing as happened. And I work 7 days a week, double shifts, and I'm doing the best I can with this commission. And the other members are too. Any accusations or insinuations that we had alternative, or that we were out to obstruct the CTA are totally erroneous. Go ahead and read that.
So, this is from select person Michael Ray Jeffries. I, Michael Ray Jeffries, offer these comments at the APDC's public hearing, I see this, especially for this, regarding the select board application to demolish the building at 30 School Street. I opt not to attend the public hearing and offer these comments for the record on what I perceive to be the unethical and unacceptable behavior by certain appointed members of the APDC. Our governance structure provides the select board with the responsibility of appointing members to some boards, such as Zoning Board of Appeals, Conservation Commission, and APDC. And it is expected for the select board to, at times, submit applications to the town and appear before those boards. Every member of every municipal board or committee should vigorously perform their duties and provide the same level of inquiry to all applicants, regardless of who they are. A public hearing should be just that. But here is what has actually happened, and it is outrageous. Several years ago, this town made the decision to create an architectural preservation district in the center of our town and created a new process requiring those with a property in the district to get the guidance and consent of a new committee, the APDC, to ensure that their exterior modifications remain as visually similar to their condition as of the passing of the bylaw as possible. And to ensure that the process is expedient, it requires quite specifically for the APDC to conduct a public hearing within 45 days of receiving an application and issue a determination within 90 days. So, on October 27th, the Select Board submitted an application to the APDC to demolish the old primary school. We can comment on these afterwards, I think. Interestingly, 1 week later, on November 4th, 2021, a Facebook page titled Lunenburg Architectural Preservation Committee was created. In November, December, there were 2 posts. Both were about the Old Methodist Church. On December 15th, 49 days after submission of an application, the APDC advised the Select Board that we filled out the wrong form. 49 days later. So on December 30th, we submitted the correct form. And on January 9th, the APDC posted a copy of that application to demolish the old primary school on Facebook and noted that the application hasn't been accepted. On January 9th, the APDC also posted their Facebook page a picture of the old primary school with a statement, "The old primary school has been badly neglected since it was vacated in 2005. It is the APDC's opinion that the town should restore and preserve the building." End quote. On January 11th, the APDC Facebook page posted a photo of a classroom in the old primary school with a caption that noted the APDC would rather see the building sold or leased to a private developer that could restore it. On January 13th, the APD posted a photo of the old primary school with the caption, "Don't let this building be demolished." And then on January 31st, 32 days after submitting the application and weeks after publicly advocating against the application, the APDC informed the select board that our application was incomplete. On February 8th, at the meeting of the select board, we extended an invitation to the APDC to meet with us. This was communicated to the APDC on February 9th, and on February 10th, the APDC declined our invitation in an email that essentially said there's nothing to discuss. Then the next day, on February 11th, 43 days after submitting the application, the APDC changed their mind and determined that the application was accepted, and they scheduled a public hearing for March 10th, which is 71 days after submitting the second application and 136 days after submitting the first. We can all disagree on solutions and results, and as I often, reasonable people disagree. Differing opinions and individual talents offered for the public good make us better, but we all have to agree on the ground rules. Our bylaws are the ground rules, and our rules say a public hearing by the APDC must be held within 45 days, not 71 days, and certainly not 136. So what happens when boards don't follow timelines? They constructively grant approvals. The APDC effectively approved the town's application to demolish the old primary school when they failed to meet the requirements of our bylaw and hold a public meeting within 45 days. No one has to deduce or assume what the APDC opinions and reflections are about the application we submitted. They've already told us and everyone else, which is anti-ethical to the purpose of fair and impartial public hearing. This overreach and obstruction, plain and simple, and I have a hard time accepting that if we were proposing to do something, that the APD supported it. It would take 71 to 136 days to even get a public hearing. If this series of events happened to a private citizen, and if that private citizen sued the town, I would not expect the select board to waste taxpayer dollars defending what was overtly wrong. Right is right, wrong is wrong, and the appearance of wrongdoing, which is hard to deny here, is the same as actually doing something wrong. We all have to hold ourselves to the highest standards. In my view, certain members of the APDC egregiously disqualified themselves from being able to fairly and impartially execute the duties of their office and should be excluded from being appointed to positions of trust in the future. It would have been okay for the APDC to hold a public hearing and then deny the application, as I expected them to do. That is completely fine, but weaponizing the process through delays and inaction and then publicly advocating as a town agent against an application submitted to them is a serious dereliction of duty. None of this should be ignored. Michael Ray Jeffries.
Okay. My intention for this public hearing was to process the CTA and move it forward. But with this, we have to address these issues, so this is going to go on. We should take those one by one. And as I stated before, I work 7 days a week, double shifts. My business requires that. So I'm doing the best I can. We received the CTA on December 30th, just before New Year's. I didn't get a chance. I worked through the holidays and weekends, and I didn't get a chance to look at it until the following week. When I saw that it was incomplete, in the interest of making sure that the application was complete and that there would be no question at public hearing, I waived the 5-day rule as chairman. Whether I can do that or not, I don't know. I thought I could, so I did. And I I wanted the full commission to look at the application and decide whether it was complete or not before we went forward with it. Two of the members thought that it was incomplete, so I returned it to the town in order to receive the missing parts. There was town council was involved with discussion of language, and it seemed like it was going to be held up. My total interest in doing this was to expedite the process of the CTA, because it was going to be a long process to get the two missing pieces on the application. At our meeting, we decided to accept the CTA and process it as it was and do the best we could with it. That's what happened there. What else?
If I may, I would like to point out, though, he's absolutely right about the fact that we did not schedule a hearing within 45 days, but that the bylaw requires us to render a decision within 90 days of the application, and we are still within that time frame.
Yes.
So that's been our intention to at least get back on track, so that we'll adhere to the process as best we can from here on out. Though we have to admit that that was an error on our part.
Yes.
Get back to the 5 days.
For anger from the select board, instead of advice in helping us through this process, I think is totally unwarranted and has been really unhelpful and concerning to myself and the members. Our intent and the idea that we were doing this to obstruct or hold up everything, or that we were activists or whatever, is totally erroneous. We always had positive intention in working for the benefit of the town and doing the job properly. If anything, we were more concerned about making a mistake and not having everything we needed for a public hearing, this being our first public hearing. Yeah, it was just too much. Please go through the other paragraphs so we can clarify anything that needs to be done. Clarified.
Mr. Chairman, I would rather spend our time talking about the application than this. So I guess what I would like to do is turn it over to the public, which is what this purpose is. The purpose of this hearing is for them to speak and ask questions and see if there's anything from this letter that people from the audience have any concerns about or wish to discuss.
Sounds good. Any questions, comments from the public on this letter? Yes, Mrs. McGrath, 22 Cushing Lane,
22
Lunenburg.
Cushing Lane, Lunenburg. Mr. Chairman, are you on Facebook?
No, I'm not on Facebook.
Okay.
As far as
Thank you.
Facebook is concerned, let me address that. I don't know anything about Facebook. I'm not on it. I live in the 20th century pretty much. As far as a computer is concerned, I know how to turn it on, how to turn it off, and make the little arrow go around so I can send out or receive emails and shop on Amazon. That's maybe do a little research, but that's the extent of my technical ability. We had a meeting and we saw that there was Facebook pages on other commissions, and we thought it would be a good idea to be able to educate. Part of the mission is to educate the public and foster understanding of the value of the architectural preservation district and its value to the town. We thought it would be useful to do that. Had no idea that there was a whole series of rules and regulations of what you could do and what you couldn't do on Facebook. Nobody ever told us that. We had no idea. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
if I might, I think we should stick to the matter at hand, the CTA, let's not drift off into other matters. If we wanted, the public wants to discuss the Facebook page, they're welcome to come to our meeting. But tonight we'll focus it on CTA and the CTA only. So let's get back to the business and see.
I did just want to also comment that I have been on the Facebook page and that I believe that all of the information has been edited and is more general. And it is pictures, what the pictures are, when the buildings were built, and stuff like that.
Any other comments or questions from the commission?
I guess, yeah, I do have a question for the people here tonight, because according to our decision criteria, I think really it all comes down, obviously this is degrading the historical value of the building 100%, and so it all comes down to, is this necessary? And we did have some discussion about that, about whether it is necessary. Some people have expressed that it is necessary just because the building, A, cannot be saved, and two, because attempts have been made to save the building that have failed.
Yes.
Or to reuse it, or to repurpose it, or refurbish it. I guess that is what I would have questions for people tonight, is if they see is the demolition necessary, and what kinds of reasons? Because I mean, if it definitely seems like again, it was probably, you know, the bylaw was written for an individual owner, but in this case, the owner is the town, and so it seems to me that a lot of reasons that it's impossible to refurbish the building are political. If people could speak to that, because I was kind of unprepared to consider that as like an impossibility of rehabilitation or an impossibility of preservation.
Any questions or comments?
I just
Jim?
would add a few comments.
Yes.
So the town has made numerous attempts at looking at that property. It's been voted on at town meeting in different ways over the years. We have gone out to bid for the sale of the property. We received zero interest, zero bids in that process. It was voted down at town meeting to authorize the selectmen to sell the building and the property. So I think a lot of effort and time has gone into looking at avenues for that property. It's obviously in complete disrepair, in my opinion. It's a public safety hazard. Obviously it has received vandalism over the years, which our facilities department spends time in addressing that when that does occur. The police department has to get involved, so there's public resources going towards that to try to eliminate that and address it after the fact as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my opinion, that the safety hazard in future to that building, I think it's much better served if that building was demolished, it was commemorated in some other way. Like Selectman Alonso noted, that forming an outline of the property of the building to say this is where that historical structure once existed, commemorative signs that would detail the history. That would be more suited to our youth and our public to visit that site and to read about the history than to look at a building in disrepair, in my opinion. Also, I think the cost to preserve this building far outweighed the historical value of the building and would be a burden on taxpayers. We have a surplus of buildings in town, as everyone is aware. It's been a long-standing discussion. We have committees, a number of committees over the years that have addressed this issue. We don't have a purpose for that building. So I think that's another factor that has to be taken into consideration. And I would ask that the Apdc consider all those as criteria for reasons for demolition as well. I also have brought up, as in discussion with town council and outside of public meeting, and I've spoken to the chairman about this, about the difference in language between the bylaw and the regulations that were drafted, and conflicting language in there, where it says shall versus should. It says should in the bylaw, so
Yes.
I think there's some more discretion that the commission has than is stated in the regulations.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers was before.
Mr. Chairman, my job has been in real estate for many, many years. I've bought, sold, owned, and managed and kept millions of dollars of real estate with myself and others. I also worked for 15 years in the banking business, financing properties. I took it upon myself ages ago to have some real estate brokers from Boston, commercial real estate brokers, whom I did business with, to come out and look at this situation. And there was nothing that they could offer that on a positive basis, unless somebody had a use, bought it, and occupied the space. I couldn't even convince local folks to buy it for $1 for all kinds of different reasons. It just does not make sense in my mind. It was a great school because you don't need the kind of things in the school that you do today to have a commercial entity. Okay? It just doesn't fit. It doesn't make any sense. And I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Mr. Lonzo.
Just for the record, for the hearing, we've talked about different town meeting articles that we've proposed different uses for in the last 5 years since there's been an APDC. But I want to tell people that when this building was vacated in the beginning, we immediately locked into a deal with an architect called John Jewell Associates, who dealt in public and senior housing, who came to us and asked if that would be a perfect location for senior housing. At that point, it was very vocal by the seniors in town that that was needed. And the Board of Selectmen unanimously decided at the time to enter into that. In order to do that, we had to basically lock out all of the possibilities to dedicate that for the applicant, that when he applied to Housing and Urban Development to the federal government, that he had the support of the town and the select board, which he did. Now, during those 3 years that we locked that property up, right at that cusp of it was the end of it, actually, was the beginning of the 2008 financial downturn. So the HUD money disappeared, but we did have that locked up for that purpose, and then it became unknown what to do with the building. We worked with Mr. Jewell 1 more year, but then money being what it was, everybody was losing homes, the financial market was going straight down. The town had no money to do anything even if we wanted to, and neither did anybody else. But I wanted that on the record because I don't want people to get the impression that from the moment the school vacated that nothing ever happened. We actively sought to put senior housing there unsuccessfully because of the national and global financial picture. But we did try, and we did dedicate three submissions, 3 years in a row to the federal government to do that at the
Yes,
time.
yeah, I'm aware of all of that. Thank you. Yes, Mr. Franco.
Yes, thank you. Lou Franco, 250 Arbor. I don't want to presume to tell you that which you already know, but just as sort of a sanity check, your function as a commission is to implement a process and not to serve as unyielding advocates for preservation. And I appreciate that, of course, a commission such as yours would attract people with that interest, and that's commendable. However, your function is to hear evidence and apply that to the bylaws, or apply the bylaws to that testimony, and reaching a decision that demolition is proper is not a failure on your part, would not be a failure. If it's warranted by the evidence, The rules allow for it if the circumstances require. So were you to render such an approval of this application to demolish, it wouldn't reflect badly on you. It would be, I think you will have executed your duty properly.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Any comments from the board? We're going to call a meeting for next week to vote on this. We'll deliberate and vote on it, and I'll have a decision for you, a written decision to the town manager on the following day. Thank you to the town manager, the select members, and the public, and all your input has been very helpful to us in this decision-making process. Usually we have meetings and there's nobody in attendance, so it's difficult to, we're kind of isolated, so this is good for us.
Welcome to the club.
When would the date of that meeting be,
Um,
and time?
Did you want to schedule that now, or?
I think we'd better, because I'm not gonna be here next week. Yeah.
So, when can you meet?
It would have to be, the soonest I could meet would be Monday, that would be 21st. Which I know would be, kind of get close for our 90-day window.
Does that work for you?
That works for me.
All right, Monday, we should have a decision for you on Tuesday morning.
What time do you mean be on, the 21st,
It'll be on 7:30.
7:30.
in this meeting room?
Yes. And whatever this decision on the CTA, the town has the option to appeal our ruling at town meetings.
Right. All right.
I assume, Mr. Chair, it'll be a written decision?
Yes, it's required to be a written decision, yes. In detail,
Is that 5 days?
what we're
Is that 5 days?
thinking.
Okay.
Are we following the guidelines?
I don't know, I'd have to, I know it would be close.
We had to, I thought we had to written a decision within 5 days after the public hearing.
I don't know, I don't think, well, why don't you read the bylaw, that's a very good question, maybe it does say it's 5 days after the hearing. I think we have 2 weeks after the hearing, as I recall. 2 weeks, or in any case, within 90 days of
I
the
thought it was 20 days.
5, 2 weeks, 20 days.
All right, I just want to make sure that we're complying with the bylaw.
Yes. Extension of exempt status. Well, one thing, I don't know, I mean, would you consider going into, just going into executive session right now, quicker to make a decision on this? or-
No, it should be open to the public.
Okay, yes,
Um,
our deliberations, okay, so then why don't we, I mean, if the applicant, is okay with that, I know there is a proviso in the rules and regulations about extensions of deadlines, so long as they're permitted by the applicant, and so I would ask, I would suggest that we ask the applicant if that timeline would be acceptable.
We're within the timeframe, 90-day timeframe.
Are we? Okay.
It was submitted on December 30th. We
Yeah,
have
so
to
give
the end
it
of
to
the
the 30th, okay, yeah.
We have to render a
Mr. Chair.
decision. Yes.
Though we're not in session, and so I'm gonna say, but the applicant has no problem with you meeting on the 21st. So
Okay.
instead of racking through the bylaws, looking for the exact time, the 21st is fine with us.
Okay, excellent. So that would be, actually Monday would be the 22nd, isn't it?
No, that's the 21st, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so okay, so Monday the 21st at 7:30, okay.
Tomorrow's Thursday. Is that
Today's
good?
Thursday.
Today's,
Today's Thursday.
Today's Thursday, so we need 48 hours.
Yeah, but it's a
You're-
week away.
you're a
You're
week
over a
away.
week away,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
this Monday,
No.
the following Monday.
Yeah,
This Monday is the 14th.
yeah, a week from tomorrow.
Oh, a
week
week
from Monday.
tomorrow.
Not from tomorrow, a week from Monday. So
You're
Monday,
gone next week all week.
I'm gone all week.
All right.
Yep. So here would be the soonest I could do it.
Monday, 21st, fine.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a process question. So that we can appeal to town meeting if
Yes.
it's denied. In what form?
You can appeal to town meeting, so if we,
So we'd have to put together an article.
if we have negative rules.
Yes.
No, but what,
Yeah.
the bylaw that we passed is after 3 months, we can't do it until the fall anyway.
Oh, that's true.
So we can't appeal, the decision through town meeting until the fall town meeting.
Mhm.
So if we, yes. Okay, any other,
Is what it is.
Mhm.
any other, comments in the meeting?
I have nothing.
All right, meeting is adjourned, 8:43.
43. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.